Welcome to the Fee for Service Dentist Podcast, Part 2, talking to Dr. Tom Rowe, who's in the process of dropping a major insurance from his office, which we come to learn is 50% of his practice. That's going to happen come January 2024. And he's talking about now 3 or 4 months into his planning and some of the things that he's been doing. It's a great update. This is Part 2, Dr. Tom Rowe. As always, Fee for Service Dentist Podcast brought to you by Kettenbach. Kettenbach has a brand new product, Visalis Fill and Visalis Flow. It's a light cured nano hybrid. High polishability, very aesthetic, high durability and strength makes it an ideal composite for anterior and posterior needs. Now, remember, with Kettenbach, your costs are lower because it's available direct to you with no middleman costs. To learn more, contact your local Kettenbach rep. That's right, your local Kettenbach rep. There's someone in your area. 877-532-2123. Kettenbach's a great company. Dan Perilli and his team is fantastic. So reach out. If you like the show, please click like, subscribe, share it with your friends. If you don't like it, please tell me. Appreciate all of you. Enjoy. Have a great day.
My name is Drew Burns, and I'm a part of a small group of dentists who believe something crazy. We believe that the standard of care is just not good enough. We demand the best of ourselves and the best for our patients. We believe that the best way? No, the only way to practice dentistry is on our own terms. If you ask the dental consultants or the corporate CEOs, they tell you that what we're doing isn't smart, that fee-for-service dentistry is dead, and that the golden age of dentistry is over. Yet, while others focus on profits first, we focus on the patient first. And yet our offices are some of the most profitable in the entire country because we invest in ourselves and we are doing things right. It's our name on the door and it's our reputation on the line. My name is Drew Burns and I am a fee-for-service dentist. This is the Fee-for-Service Dentist Podcast, and these are our stories.
Welcome to the Fee for Service Dentist Podcast, Dr. Sonny Spira. Today's our guest, Tom Rowe, and it's going to be a nice follow-up to our previously recorded podcast when Tom decided, hey, as of January 1st, I'm dropping insurance, and he dropped Delta was the one that he had dropped, and we're going to have a little update on how it's going, and he's learned quite a bit as he's done this. So I'm going to let Tom give us a recap of where we started.
Yeah, so last time we talked was March of 2023. We had decided that we were going to drop Delta in January 1st of 2024 so that we could try to minimize any loss of our patients and not have catastrophic loss of patients and profit and everything like that. So we have updated since last time. We've kind of updated the team, made sure everyone's aware of it, practiced a little bit, watched some people word vomit all over the place. And it's been a good learning experience. And so I think there's a lot that I've learned over the last 3 months, and hopefully we can dive into that really well.
So they're getting better at it, would you say, the verbal skills?
Yeah, I would say I have two of my staff are really good at it, and I would say there's some that are really still hesitant on it, and a couple that are very fearful of saying anything. And so it's kind of like, do you want to say something? I'm like, yes, I'm happy to talk with them. And I think I'm not afraid to tell patients the why. So the nice thing is we've dropped a lot of plans before. So we've dropped Guardian, we've dropped Cigna, and we dropped all the umbrella policies underneath Guardian, which was like 40 insurances. Mm-hmm. So we've dropped a lot of these plans over the years. The verbiage has changed a little bit over the years for each plan. But really, we all know the real reason overall, which is
the future of fee-for-service dentistry is based in membership patients. If you need help starting your membership plan, or if your plan is too big for your team to manage, visit dentalmembershipdirect.com to set up your free membership growth solution demo with our team.
To disconnect the patient from the insurance and just have the relationship with the patient and us and be able to get a full fee for what we deem as reasonable and rational for what we're doing.
So what's your strategy and plans? I mean, because like you said, this is not your first rodeo. So what's the plans to bring those other ones on board?
Yeah, good questions. Yeah, so one of the coolest things I think I did different was we have one major employer. We have a couple large major employers in the city. But we have one that's a large hotel group, and they were in network with Delta Dental. And so what I did is went straight to their HR person, and said, "Hey, just a heads up, in 9 months, we're going to be out of network with your dental benefit plan. And the out of network benefits are pretty terrible. You should look at offering a plan that's going to have good out of network benefits." And actually, she came in again as a patient and was like, "Hey, that's awesome. We've reached out to the buyers group that does our health benefit plans, and they are very well aware of it. And not only that, she said they have heard this a lot before." So I think there is employers are realizing that some of these plans are not great too as well. And Delta's probably hopefully going to lose the monopoly that they have in this game.
Well, so education is a good thing, whether it's your patients or whether it's the employer.
Yeah, right.
And it's different when you approach it from a position of understanding and knowledge. It's a whole different conversation. Yeah, I find the same thing.
Yeah. And so, I'll pick your brain on this too, Sonny, is, if you're 6 months out, what changes or what things would you do to patients? Obviously, we have Dentrix, and we have a special color for the Delta patients of the day. So when I look at the schedule in the morning, I can see who's not paying a full fee schedule, and I can see who is this bright purple color. And that's my flag to say, oh, I got to go talk to these people or make sure somebody talks to them. And then my thought is, I want to send the magic letter that most of the patients are going to read, but I'd rather send it out twice. My thought is I want to send one out kind of now, just saying, hey, we have this option, because some people do, enroll throughout the year.
Sure.
Um, and I want to send another one in mid-October, right before most people sign up for the health and dental benefits, and just saying, hey, instead of paying the $50 or $60 a month for your dental plan, we have an in-office one that's going to save you a little bit of money, and not be as restrictive as one you can get on the open market.
Well, I think that's a huge plus if you can do that. I think that's a very smart thing to do, is to get that information out. And again, it's dealing with people at a position of knowledge. And now they have an understanding of what that means. The more information I think that you can gather, the better. If
Yep.
there's any way that you can get in network, out of network fees, like if that HR person can provide you with a little bit of coloring in the background. So, for example, right now, if you come in for, your routine prophy exam, it's, $150. If you come in 6 months, our fee is going to be this, or you could just simply say your benefits are going to go down to $100.
Yep.
So it's tangible, right? And they're not changing, quote unquote, their plan. Or you can tell people, if they ask you, well, what's the difference? Well, the difference is going to be approximately this. Now, if you pay or you pick up our membership plan and don't have dental insurance, that money you're spending on your plan is $50 a month, $600 a year. Our plan per person is $400, and it includes all your preventive care work.
Yep.
Oh, really? Yep. And there's no maximum, there's no deductible, there's no yearly, exclusions and limitations, et cetera. It's truly whatever you want. And then when you have a little experience with it, you can say, and the average person on our plan saves themselves $300 a year. Just real data, right? I think the biggest thing is you got to sell the benefit to the patient. Like, why going out of network for you is a benefit to them.
Yeah.
You could never go wrong with that. I don't think the dollar and cents part I would never really mention in terms of the fees are unreasonable or unfair, or we're working on an unlivable wage. Like, there was a dentist I just spoke to that when he looked at his 3 plans he was still in with, 2 of them were paying in the 30 to 40% range. Can you imagine? I couldn't. I said, this is a 30-year fee. And we went through some discovery. I said, well, you got to look at how many you have. You got to look at how much dollar revenue comes into your practice. So it was a $1.7 million practice, and it was $100,000 was from this insurance plan and the patients. And I was like, sounds like an easy decision if you ask me.
I would agree with you on that one. So
Mhm.
I actually, maybe I'm doing it the wrong way. I'm doing both. I'm talking about how there's a lot of limitations with insurance and how our plan is not limiting. And we
Mhm.
have, the standard plan, the perio plan, two different levels of perio plan. And then we give them a certain percent off any restorative work. But our cost of living in our county, like a lot of places, have drastically increased. I mean, we're
Yeah,
talking
same here.
housing prices have probably gone up 200% in the last 5 years. Um,
Nice.
yeah. And so what I'm
How
actually
about the
telling is
cost of a burger?
you go to town and a burger's $20 here.
Right. And
Yeah.
what was it 2 years ago?
15.
Okay.
But we're a tourist town, and so our cost of
Sure.
living's always been higher. Um, but minimum wage here has gone from, it was about $12 an hour set by the ski resort, and now it's $20 an hour. So
Yeah.
most of the employees have
75% increase.
correct. And so what I've told them is, look, the plan we're left with has given a 1% raise. So I went back and looked at Delta fee schedule from 2013 for the premier plan. And I'm like, it's a 1% raise. It's not attainable to do the highest quality. I go, the offices that are still going to be remaining are going to be doing accelerated work. Assistants are going to be doing all the work they can. I don't want to do that. I want to focus on high quality care. I can't remain in network and do high quality care
Mhm.
because at the end of the day, we do have bills to pay. We got to be profitable, and I got to pay my employees a living wage. And most of the patients totally understand that. There's got to be a certain subset that are living such tight budgets that they just can't afford, an extra $50 for a
Sure.
cleaning. And you know what? Those probably aren't the patients for us, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think the way you script it or coach those words to me is you can do that and still you're focusing on what it means to them, what's the benefit to them. So, although, the world around us is changing and they haven't changed in 20 years, what they're causing, doctors and the providers to do is cut and compromise quality, compromise care, and also deal with the least affordable option. And, like to me, uh, a great example I'd used before is listen, if you're in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, let's just say, Chicago, you can walk, you can ride a bike, you can take a bus, you can drive a car, you can fly. All of them are going to get you to Chicago. Okay. But if we're going to take the least costly option, they're going to tell you, get some Nikes and start walking, but they're going to allow you. See, they're not going to stop you from walking, getting there, but, is that a reasonable choice? Why shouldn't it be? Listen, Tom, if you want to go to, you know, Chicago, here's a flight, and here's what we're going to pay for that. And here's this, and here's not like, no, we're only going to go with the least affordable option. Or, you got a bunch of teeth missing. Oh, we're not going to pay to replace them. We're going to pay now to remove the rest of your teeth and put a denture in because the cost analysis to us is all we look at. We don't
Yep.
look at what your benefit is. So I would much rather have the conversation with you and let you decide what's best for yourself. And most people really kind of can grasp that.
I think that's beautiful. It's poetic. Everyone write that down. That's just liquid gold right there.
That's off the top. I mean, you could, but think of something else, right? You could just use a different analogy, right?
No, I think it's beautiful. I always use the burger analogy. Hey, if you're going out to eat, you can always get the drive-through at McDonald's, or when I'm going for a date night, I typically don't bring my wife to McDonald's. I'm going to go to a nice steakhouse or a sushi restaurant or something like that because to me, it's a I only get one experience that day to take my wife out, and I want it to be a nice experience. I don't want it to be, as fast and low quality as I can get. But some people are okay saving the few dollars because they need to, and if that's totally your choice.
But also, you have a choice. So you chose to go to those restaurants, and the insurance carrier says, "Oh, we're not paying for that. We're paying zero. We will
Yep.
pay for McDonald's." So if I want to have my insurance, if I'm my crutch, then I'm going to go there. Why don't I have the freedom of choice?
Yep.
And that's to me, that's a different, like, it's a different mentality. You can use that analogy all day long.
Exactly. One other thing I was going to say, Sonny, that I really realized over the last few years of going out that I think most people aren't aware of is when you have an office that's 75% PPO or
Mm-hmm.
insurance driven, and then you start dropping plans, what then happens is these patients are trained to want to have insurance. And I think there is a mentality thing of I feel safe if I have something called insurance. When you start calling it a dental coupon, which is really what it is, they kind of laugh and they're like, you're more right. But then you say, hey, I'm dropping plan A. They go, oh, well, what plans are you in with? Oh, we only
Right.
take B and C and D.
Yeah, they're
Then
going to
when it
migrate. Yeah.
they're going to migrate back over there, and you're like, next thing you know, you're still at 75% in network, and you're like, okay, cool, I trimmed the fat of the plan that was paying me 30%. Well, hopefully it wasn't
Yeah.
that bad. But okay, you dropped the plan that was paying you, only 70% just to get another plan that was paying 72%. It's like, was that really worth it at the end of the day? And how do you limit all that factor? I think if I was to go backwards in time, I feel like I would have basically said, we're just going fee for service. We're going to do it all over the next 18 months. And so that way, when the patients hear, oh, you're going out and network with my plan, oh, what are you going to be in with? We're just going to be offering a membership plan. And it gives the tools to your staff to communicate
Mhm.
better to the patients because I don't want my staff lying and I don't want them to being deceiving. But
But
the sun's coming up and it's quite bright here now all of a sudden. Um,
but see, you're setting the course, that you're charting the course for the practice, and if everybody's on board and that's your plan, then that's communicated easily, right? This
correct.
is our strategy. This is our plan. Yes, this and this. The situation, the reality of it is, this is the direction we're taking the plan because it's in the patient's best interest. So you can do that, and I get that. And a friend of mine said the same thing, and up in Massachusetts and it was Delta was the plan, and people were all moving or going into that, and she found that they were just filling more of the spots, so she had to kind of use some block scheduling techniques to keep those spots open for full pay patients.
Yeah. And I don't blame her for doing that. I mean, like, and when I'm sitting there having the conversation with patients, it's, oh, well, your staff told me to sign up with Delta because that was the only one you guys were going to be in with, 2 years ago. And it's like, I'm just sitting back like, like
That's a
they're
that's a
not,
breakdown in communication.
totally. And it's one of those, we had an in-office plan. They didn't really buy into it, I think. And
Sure.
I think, we've had some staff turnover, and so we've got stronger employees now. Um, but yeah, it's a total breakdown of communication. And that's one of those things as the doctor, the owner, the entrepreneur, you can't micromanage all these things. You think you do the training and you tell everyone that, and then you aren't sitting up front all the time. And then when I'm talking to patients 2 years later, you're like, we lost it. We bungled that one. And now we have a chance to recover and keep these patients. And, I saw somebody on Saturday with a broken tooth, and that's when it hit me is he's like, well, what are you going to be in with? And I had the conversation on a Saturday on my day off, seeing somebody for a chipped tooth. And I was like, we're going to be out of network. And he's like, well, what's the other alternative? And I was like, well, we have an in-office membership plan. And he's like, it's cheaper than what I'm paying. And I'm just like, just light bulbs going off in my head of I really believe in it now. I really think we need to make sure that everybody's on board with that.
Yeah, I think probably the best thing you can do is have those. You got to have those real heart-to-heart meetings and talk to people, because I'm going to guess if your staff of a team of 6 or 8, 2 or 3 just don't fully buy it,
Yep.
and as long as they don't, when they're pushed or pressed or have that patient who gets in their personal space or speaks a little faster and more demanding, that they get back on their heels and they're going to go to their natural response.
And
Right?
it's tough conversations. Some
Sure it
people
is.
don't want to have tough conversations. We all have the staff member that's like, well, we can do a crown. If they don't say yes right away, it's, well, do you want time to think about it?
Yeah, yeah.
Do
They
you
just
want?
fill in the space. Yeah, they're uncomfortable with that moment of silence.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I've learned over time presenting treatment, it's you just gotta wait. And sometimes
Yeah.
that long, awkward silence is okay. It's not they don't like you, they just need
Yeah.
time to process it.
Yeah, well, you know what they're thinking of, right? A lot of times in their mind, they're like, okay, I need a crown. What does that mean? Where's the money? My kid's going to college. I know Jenny needs, her new school supplies. And, we were talking about going away,
Yep.
and they're in their mind rearranging some things before they say anything. They're not necessarily saying, oh, he's, what's he trying to sell me? It's oftentimes it's kind of a lack of self-esteem or just saying, this is what I think you should do. And then
Yeah.
silence.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I mean, patients don't accept treatment for fear, money, time, or convenience. And so, if you can overcome all four of those or whatever their major objection is, they're going to say yes to your treatment as long as they understand and believe in it. And sometimes these or the staff just don't want to take that awkward silence and just let it ride. So,
But yeah, go ahead.
yeah,
They got
I
they got to be comfortable. I think they got to be very comfortable with the treatment, the plan, their care, the long-term effects. And it's so easy. And I think the simple thing is to also educate your team too, is, well, let's look at this situation. Here's a patient who had, a cavity and we had addressed it. They never fixed it. Now we're doing an extraction or a root canal and a crown. So now that $200 or $300 procedure is now several thousands of dollars, right?
yep.
So, and then celebrate your successes. Say, listen, we just took care of this filling for this patient. Do you understand what that means? This could have been this very easily within a couple of years with neglect or not showing up or what have you. So these are all, kudos to our philosophy, treatment, prevention, long-term plan, et cetera. And it just kind of reinforces the quality that you're delivering.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what were some of the other things that you're noticing? So you're 6 months in uh, from the decision, and you're 6 months away. Well, 5.5 months away from making that change out of Delta. So are you feeling like that people are starting to scurry a little bit?
No, not yet. Well, is all practice a struggle. Let's see, my last time we had talked, I had lost my associate to some complications from maternity. She had a healthy baby. She's healthy now, but the question is whether she's going to return or not. And even if she does return, it's not going to be nearly the same capacity. So we are actively trying to hire a new person. I've got somebody. We're ironing the fine tuned details out, and that's fantastic. Lost a hygienist, and when you lose a hygienist, they aren't growing on trees these days. So we had a month or so of hygiene being extremely booked out to the point, where it's like, hey, you need SRP, great, we'll put you in October. It's like, which is 4 or 5 months later. It's that's not a win for the practice. We've since hired a fantastic hygienist in a true winner, and I think it's going to be one of those lifelong employees too with us. And she's only been here a couple weeks, and she's just like, this is the best work environment I've ever been at. And so, to me, my struggles with it have been the time getting patients in. We went from, okay, we can get you in 2-3 weeks, doctor side, to, okay, now we're 8 weeks. A big treatment plan is going to be 12 weeks out or something like that. To hygiene, new patient exam and cleaning is going to be 3-4 months out. And that doesn't help grow your fee for service side of the practice, or out of network patients by any means.
Oh, it
So that was
discourages them. You got no
no
place to
correct.
put them.
I mean, luckily everyone's up here is relatively the same amount of time booked out. But that's a tough thing when you're trying to go out of network when you are not trying to lose patients. Um, and I think that struggle is real across the entire United States, I would imagine at this point in time. And I don't think that problem's going away anytime soon.
So, do you have your numbers on how much Delta? Two things, right? Do you have an idea of the revenue that comes from your Delta insurance patients and insurance, right? So the whole like what that number looks like, and do you have an idea on the percent of your practice?
Yeah, it was about 47, 48% when I look at everything year over year and of Delta revenue. So take in,
Now
the
that's not only insurance, that's insurance plus the patient's co-payments, right? That's what you're looking at.
correct.
Okay,
So if a standard crown in my office, let's say we're $2,000, but a Delta one worth $1,300 or whatever it is, that's a strong 30% write off.
uh-huh.
Cleanings it may be more even in this day and age.
Hmm.
So it depends on the code. We're 30 to 40% off, which is a very expensive
Yeah.
advertising budget. That's not your
Hmm.
standard 4% advertising budget. So if I look at that and say, okay, we did last year we did about 2 point I I forget the exact number. I think it was about 2.4, 2.3 roughly. If we
Sure.
looked at that and said, okay, 1.1 roughly was Delta,
Hmm.
but if that was fee for service, we'd be looking at collecting close to 1.5. And so to me, that's a huge write-off that we're doing. So I'm comfortable if we lose 30% of those Delta patients, we're still
Yeah.
going to be breaking even. And we know that when we're this booked out, the
Yeah.
holes are going to get filled with out of network or full paying patients. I'm still going to, for the plans we can that we were allowed to try to get the assignment of benefits at the office. I think that that's a nice service in the short term as
Sure.
that transition happens. I don't see us doing that forever, but I think that's a soft transition.
Does Delta pay the patient, or does Delta send
Yeah,
checks?
I don't think they're allowed to, or Delta doesn't allow you to take assignment of benefits in our state. I could be wrong about that, but talking to the other doctors, they all say no, the patient gets the check from Delta.
So you shouldn't say it that way. Delta doesn't allow you. You should say Delta Delta has decided that they're not going to send the checks to the office. They're only going to send the checks to the subscribers.
Yep, you're
You
right.
know, it's just the slight little difference. So the reality of it, folks listening here, is that we're looking at almost half of the practice, right? And listening to you though, Tom, I mean, okay, if you lost 30% of those patients, okay, and you had 30% openings in your schedule, you could facilitate that with your new patient flow, patients who need work, get them in sooner. You can really ramp up your treatments and get them in a little more timely. And you're seeing patients that are now paying the full freight, whether it's through your membership plan or they have insurance that assists them in paying their the full fee. Either way, I just think it's clean, but it's got to be a scary thought. And I bet you those folks that have those doubts in your team are starting to get, a little shaky, as the time whittles on.
Yeah, and I don't think they're worried about the practice as a whole. I think staff member worries are completely different. Staff members are more likely to be more day-to-day living, paycheck to
Yeah.
paycheck. And so they feel bad to the patient saying, yeah, that we used to give this crown for $300 off. And like, we get that that's a push for you, but they also understand it's like, they're like, your work is better than most dentists. And I'm like, yes, they got to pay for that. And so I think that disconnect of the practice as a whole doing well versus saving the patient a couple $100, that's the hard pill for them to swallow for some of them. Some of them are totally on board.
Wait. How about this? This always boggled my mind. Patient sitting in room 2 getting a crown on tooth number 19. Patient sitting in room 3, they're getting a crown on number 13. Right?
Yep.
patient and number two is paying 1,300. Patient number three is paying $2,000. Is patient in three to $2,000 subsidizing the other patient? Are they getting the same crown? And to me, those are the questions that I bring up to patients too. I said, I don't ever want a patient to have to think, am I using inferior products, inferior materials, or going on the gray market, buying things from questionable sources, reducing my cost because of this, or is the other person who's paying the full fee getting lesser or the same as what this other one is? To me, I can't change on my quality. My quality has to be kept to a certain level. I have to deliver the same product.
I'm
So
100% with you on that. And look, 10 years ago, it was a 5 or 10% write off. It's like, cool. Well, Delta did the marketing for you. They're giving you just like feeds of patients because you're on their magic list. And that's all that patients really cared about then, it seemed like. I mean, most patients weren't educated enough to understand dentist A and dentist B are different than,
yeah,
DSO A and B. It didn't, that wasn't even on the radar back then. And so it's, look, writing off 5%, that's what you would spend on a marketing budget typically. So like, but then when you're talking 20, 30, 40, 50% write-offs, that's when those questions are very ethical and very serious questions. And I'm 100% on board with you. And I think there's some dentists out there that didn't treat all patients the same. And I think that's an interesting thought process of, okay, yeah, the $1,300 crown goes to lab A, the $2,000 crown goes to, lab B that's an AACD accredited lab. It's like, yeah, I understand why they're doing that.
yeah, and that brings up a question. So my thought would be with your team, like, okay, those two patients are neighbors. What if they talk? What if they walk out and say, "Listen, I paid $2,000. Well, I only paid $1,300.
Yep.
Who gets quote unquote? Who's getting shafted? Who's getting the deal? Why is it different? And
Correct.
how is it? How can we justify that bias, right? Or that quote discrimination, right? How can you do that?
That's a serious question, and that's not one I'm not prepared to answer.
Well, but I think that's the question that I mean, like in their minds, say, listen, we're leveling the playing field, right?
Yep.
We're making it equal and fair for everybody. You're the CEO of a company, you push a broom at the company. Say it.
Yep. Well, and you know what? When you're fee for service too, you have that pain in the ass patient. Guess what? You can charge more. I mean, I did this the other day. Oh, don't lean me back. I get vertigo. Or I feel nauseous if I lean back too much. Can you open up? You're like, I can't even get a 330 in here. How am I supposed to prep this number 15?
Yeah.
So I told her, hey, we can bring a CRNA in and do this with sedation, and then you don't feel like you're falling through the chair. My back will feel better. I can work faster. We don't have to worry about it. It's going to be more comfortable for you and me. Or if you don't want to do that, I totally understand. My cost is going to be more than actually the crown with sedation, and I want you to make that decision. Well, she decided she didn't want sedation. And, a normal crown prep, I'm in and out of there 15 minutes. And 30 minutes later, she's like, well, we didn't take the whole hour and a half you gave me for this. So I was like, well, we didn't do the build up, so you're going to save some money today. But no, this took me twice as long, and I already took 3 ibuprofen. My back already hurts. I'm still sticking. And she's like, well, my husband's crown like 6 months ago was like $1,000 left. I was like, yes, but your husband's crown was way easier. And she's like, well, I totally get it. He would charge more for his time because he's a lawyer. And it's
Right.
like, yeah, I'm okay charging more for tough patients now.
Well, also, what if it's a complicated case? What if you've got, a decreased vertical, you've got to,
Correct.
evaluate all these different things, and you're going to have someone in temporaries for a period of time. And normally a temporary is part of the fee for the regular care, but you got to have charges for interim. It's like, no, this is the reality of it. And it's per patient, right?
Absolutely. And I think when you're out of network, you have the autonomy to say, look, I presented that to a patient yesterday for a full mouth rehab case. And it's like, yeah, his case was not going to be cheap, and there was some sticker shock in there, but it's like my stuff's like, oh, that was an expensive one. I was like, Yeah, he's gonna be in temporaries for 3 to 6 months, depends on how everything goes
Mhm.
and how and making sure that there's tons of red flags in there, and I think if you've done lots of education, you've done a,
Mhm.
post grad work, or you've
Mhm.
done, a Dawson Coy SPE or something of those natures, you're going to understand all these red flags. So you are okay charging more for these
Mhm.
red flag cases that are gonna, it's not just a single tooth on a premolar that's, you can throw a CERA crown on it. It's probably gonna be fine. These are much more complicated cases and you should charge more for your time.
So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
That patient says, "Oh my God, that's a lot of money." What'd you say? What's your answer?
Oh, it was funny. I go, "Are you ready for the sticker shock?" And he's like, "I know it's not going to be cheap." I said, in his case was, I'll actually give the real example. It was going to be crown 3 through 13. We were able to transition to just 3 crowns in the lower and a bunch of composite bonding. We're going to open VDO up, and then it's going to be in-house perio, is going to be sinus augmentation and an implant on 14, and we were coming out to about 35 grand. And he's a long-time local patient here. I wasn't trying to nickel and dime him, but I feel like that was a pretty fair fee. And I'm looking at it saying it's going to be, probably 30 hours of work in my office. And so I was like, I'm okay with getting this as my walkout price. And I say you're going to be about $35,000. And I go, we can do it today. We can do it in steps, and it'll be much more expensive because my fee's going to be more next year.
Mhm.
And he looks over at his wife and he goes, "We have to do it. I know I need this." And she's like, "Yes, you needed this 5 years ago."
Mhm.
And then the question was, what kind of financing options do you have?
Right.
And what I told him is, I go, I don't know. I need to actually talk. And so I went and talked with my front desk lead and said, "Hey, you were friends with them. What do you think should we do?" I said, "I got option A, which is basically a lot of the treatments got to happen over a year. So let's do a 0% financing for 6 months. If they're going to do it over a 12-month period, we can do it at a 5% interest or something like that."
Mhm.
And she's like, "I think that's really fair. That's really reasonable." This is typically the front desk person that always tells me I need to charge more for cases too, which is great
Mhm.
to have your employees telling you you should charge
Sure.
more.
Mhm.
Um, and fun transition from that one, Sonny, is I had talked with my staff earlier that day of how can we use AI to help us, and how can we use that to make your guys' life easier? And they're like, "None, no way." I was like, "Well, let's throw some stuff in chat GPT." And they're like, "What is that?" And I told them,
Right.
I was like, "Have you've heard of that before, right?"
Mhm.
And I was like, "Why don't you basically just give this AI program what you want it to say in the email?" And she's like, "I put it in the details and ask it to write a letter in a very patient friendly format." She's like, "It was just pure, so nice and poetic." She's like, "It was the most nice way of asking for $35,000 I've ever seen."
Mhm.
And she's like, and it came out to like a 2-page letter, and it was so nice and like empathetic and caring. And like, she's like, "I would have never been able to do this." And so I think, um, I've told my staff we should be using this for any email that doesn't require a 2-sentence response. You should use this program to help, you know, get on the level with a patient. You guys, we're always, sometimes you read an email, it seems nice, sometimes it seems
Mhm.
blunt. They probably are nice even if it seems blunt. I was like, this AI stuff is gonna be ramping up everywhere. And I think it's time for us to get on board with that. And my staff, like,
Mhm.
instantly after one example, they were like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing," of taking that service level to a 5-star experience.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that was pretty cool. Have you used it all?
I've only played around with it a little bit, very little bit, and it's an interesting concept. It's an interesting process. In fact, my daughter's boyfriend is trying to create, and he's got a little business that he's starting to get going, and it's using AI to in the NHL world, and taking all of the chatter that's all over the place in like who's playing and who's this, and creating essentially a database slash resource for kind of predictability. And it's using AI in a very unique way, and it's pretty interesting. And I've been working on it for a little bit of time now, and I hope it comes to fruition. It sounds really interesting. So I just put an app on my phone, Chat GPT. So if I ever wanted to try using it easier on my phone, I could try it. But I've done certain things. I've asked certain questions, and it's come up. And the other day I just said, "Hey, what's an average dentist, general dentist, make in the United States?" And they came back with an answer, and I said,
What
"Okay,
was
what's
the
the?"
answer?
It was 176,
Yeah.
and then I said, "What does the average dental practice owner make?" It came out 196. So it was kind of interesting. It said it used ADA numbers or it got some of the data, and it wasn't 2023 data, but it was 2021 maybe, something like that. But kind of neat thing. Now, I'm not a guy that surfs the web, and I can't stand doing all that stuff. So if I can, shortcut things, probably would.
Yeah, no, it's genius.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's interesting looking at dental incomes over the last 10, 20 years. If you compared that to inflation, I bet we're pretty stagnant as a whole because of the handicap from PPO plans and everything like that. And I think that's something it's staggering. And I feel bad for kids coming out of school with
How
all
about
this debt.
add that to the increase in corporate?
Correct.
Who really just looks at the bottom line, and you're just a machinist. You're not really a doctor. You know,
You're producing a dental widget.
Mhm. You've commoditized it, right?
Correct.
So you now can have your levels of crown. You can have your, you know, you know, good, better, best, right? So you can have the platinum crown, you can have the gold crown, or you can have the, silver crown. What would you like?
Yep.
But the interesting part of what you discussed with that one patient with extra time was her choice. You gave her a choice. You said, "Here's a way we can do it, and here's another way we can do it." And you know, there's it's so much easier conversation when you have that beforehand, and you put it all out on the table, and they make a decision. Now they're cooperating in their own care. So,
No, and I think enabling a patient to make the decision and being very frank and honest of, hey, if we're going to do a complex case and you need to spread it out over 2 or 3 years,
mhm.
you know what? It may cost you an extra $7,000, $8,000 because it's going to
Correct.
cost me 7, 8 hours of more work. And if you're okay with that, I'm okay with that.
How
But
about the condition worsens?
correct.
Hmm.
And so, you know, I think if the condition's worsen, you got to really explain that to the patient. If
Hmm.
you have a bigger case and you're okay sequentializing stuff and having them in temporaries or quote unquote longer term buildups and stuff that
Right.
you could do, I think your end outcome is going to be roughly the same. I don't like doing a big case where it's the front six crowns are 3 years behind the posterior crowns. It's like
Hmm.
that's not ideal for me. What's it going to look like 15 years from now? Does that mean everything gets redone at year 12, or does everything get redone still at year 20?
Hmm.
Um, so, well, I was going to say, Sonny, if you were 5.5 months out from dropping your last insurance and you were in my shoes, what would you do different than what I've told you so far, or would you kind of be doing the same playbook? Tell me what your thought process would be going at this point in time.
From the sounds of it, and I'm going to kind of listening to your concerns, I think I would have a lot of really deep, you know, team meetings where you're role playing, and you're putting people on the spot, but you're putting people on the spot in front of their friends too,
Yep.
so they can get more comfortable having uncomfortable conversations, and giving them enough so that they can use their own words that mean themselves, so it's authentic to them.
Yep.
But having some common denominators, unrestricted provider, out of network, um, you know, quality of care, benefit to the patient, benefit to the patient. I think it's it's, rinse, wash, repeat. I think you have to kind of reinforce that, but I also think you have to give them, solid examples of why it's good, and patients, testimonials or returns based on, what you're seeing and what you're experiencing. And I can go right around the room and say, okay, your hygienist, what were some of the conversations you had? Well, give us some examples of what you've seen.
Yep.
And I think you do it, but I think you got to do it consistently. But I think you just got to give them the skills to do it. But it's also non-negotiable, and I think they have to understand that. And I do feel, and I've seen this and heard this a lot, is not everybody makes a journey. Not everybody makes that trip because, listen, my next door neighbor is on this plan at Delta, and I don't see how they put their value, right. I don't see how they're going to be able to do this. And okay, I understand that, but you know, here's what we're doing. And I can fully accept if you can't row in the same direction, I can understand. And maybe you need to be on a different boat, you know.
Yep. What
And
you're describing though is you think the best way to retain patients is the one-on-one rapport conversation that happens
yeah,
between assistant, doctor, or hygienist or reception and talking with the patients one-on-one. And I think you're absolutely right. Um, and I think,
well, let's face it. Let's say you got a patient in the chair and you tell them, listen, you broke, that patient you saw on Saturday, you got a chipped tooth. Listen, you broke off the distal buccal, you broke off this cusp. This is what holds the tooth together. It's gone. I think we're going to need to, put full cast coverage, a crown on here, et cetera, et cetera. If you leave the room and your assistant is there, they're going to say, hey, Joanne, what do you think? I think your tooth's broken and you should put a crown on. Done. Done. It's over in 7 words as opposed to 20 minutes that we spend because we have to regurgitate all the Greek and Latin we learned at dental school, you know. So that is what you're going to need on this level. So if you have that same conversation, here's what we're doing, and oh, okay, Greece. And you say like, well, what's really going on? Doc needs more money. Oh no, this is all about, you know, getting you the best care you can have in such a way that you are at the table making the decision, not an intermediary or whatever it is, whatever we find. But I think that's when it's a home run. And then when you send out the letters, I think about it. I would probably let people know that, listen, I spoke to, especially people in that one plan with that one employer. I'd say I had a conversation and it looks like the out of network benefits are not great. And I made them aware of it. And I know that they're going to be looking to improve the type of benefits they do offer.
yeah, I was
So
even thinking
you're
about,
an advocate. You're an advocate for them.
I was thinking about going to them and saying, I would offer you guys, if the employer paid me directly, we can do, an in-office plan.
Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
tried the same thing.
I don't know if they would bite on that or not, but if you're talking an employer group that's got 500 people or something like that, it's
What's
almost,
wrong with it? What's wrong? Let's say, listen, every employee, here's the plan, and if you have quote a savings account, now you can get it for tax money for them. It's even better than if they're paying me, right?
yep,
So if your company, it just dollars and cents, right? If your company is paying $300,000 a year on dental insurance, okay, then if you want to offer this as a cafeteria menu option, this is what you can do. There's nothing wrong with it. I tried that. I didn't have a whole lot of success, but I tried that same exact thing. It makes sense.
yeah. I don't know if there would be any success of that or not. So I'm glad you've tried it, and it doesn't give me too much hope if it failed for you. But what's the worst thing? It's a conversation you have, and it costs you 10 minutes of your time, and to me, that's not a big deal. So
But you know what you're showing the employer?
you
You
care.
care. Right. And that's the message throughout the whole thing. We care about our patients, we care about our community, we care about the people we work on and the results ultimately that they get. So you can't lose.
Yep.
They say no, but they're like, damn, that Dr. Rowe, he gives a shit. You know, he
Yep.
cares. He's in here. He's in here, kind of advocating for his patients. You're not
Well,
in
and
there saying, you know what, give me a raise. It's like, no.
I'd even go. Maybe I'm crazy saying this. And maybe this is you can't do this because of antitrust laws or collaboration. I'd go to we got two other dental offices in our small city. I'd go to them and say, hey, we can go to this employer all together and look. I can't see every patient in the town. You guys can't see every patient in the town. We can go to them and say, hey, you guys are probably always equally seeing a third or 25% of these patients. We can go to them together and say, you can pick any one of the dentists in the town and go to them as the in-office plan. We all agree to the same price or whatever. I would be okay with that. But what I don't want is these patients having to drive 2 hours to go find an in-network dentist
Right,
for them to save $35 so they can spend 100 on gas going round trip 4 hours.
right.
I don't know if that would violate any antitrust laws or anything like
Oh,
that,
that
but
absolutely would. I could tell you
yeah,
that right now. That's what you described. Unless you guys, I think you have the potential to maybe form a foundation or a consortium or something like that. That maybe that you guys, are members of, and then that group speaks. I don't know. I don't know how it would work, but I know that the antitrust laws are very,
they protect the big wigs that are making the billions
yeah,
of
they
dollars.
ain't helping us. They're
Nope.
not, like, even the fee for service thing. I've had people, talk about, like, oh, if we had a symposium or we had a conversation and we brought education to population, it could easily be viewed as anti-Delta or anti-Aetna or anti-Cigna or whatever, and they'd be all over it. So it's an interesting concept.
Yeah, it sure isn't protecting the patient in that case.
So, mm-mm, not at
Uh,
all.
anything
Well,
else you're thinking of?
no, I think that, and I think the letter part, I think the letter has to come from the heart and has to be authentic. So if Chat GPT helps you with it, I still think you got to put your spin in there. It's got to make it sound like it's coming from Tom. That's my
I
thought.
agree, and I've
Yeah.
wrote the letter before. I can give the examples of the letters I've given before too, and
Right.
um, if anyone wanted to reach out for that's totally fine too. But to me, this will be a different letter than the
Uh-huh.
other ones I've had to write in the past as well. And
Uh-huh.
I might have Chat GBT, fine tune
Mhm.
my letter. You throw it in there and you say, put this in play to the emotion of the patient, and it will authenticate that pretty well for you and clean up your language.
Let me ask you a question. Do you have any patients that you're really close with, like you've had a great relationship?
Yeah, I mean, we've got you're a small
Like, just
town. I
just
mean,
yeah, just
yeah,
pick five. I would say pick 4 or 5 patients and ask if one or two of them would be willing to come in, and when you have a group meeting, and say, okay, here's Mrs. Jones, and she's been a patient of ours for 10 years. She's has this insurance, which we're planning on changing. Let's have some conversations with her, and sort of let them express some of, freely express some of their concerns or emotions. And now it's like, okay, this is one example, and you maybe have a couple people, and you maybe give them all free dinners or something like that for participating, but they help educate your team, and then you're talking to them, and now you're having a conversation, and then you say, well, if I said something like this, what would you hear? Oh, yeah. And if I said something like this, what would you hear? Like, what would you? It's almost like a test market, right? Like,
yeah.
well, what's wrong with that?
No, I think that's cool. I mean, it's kind of like, when you launch a new product, you get 10 people,
Right.
you pay them $100 to go sit in a room for 4 hours. And,
Yeah.
there's the glass mirror and everyone, you got five advertisers sitting behind there just taking notes like crazy. No, I think that's an interesting idea. I've never thought of that, of bringing a couple patients in or FaceTime and recording them, and giving them a Starbucks gift card or something like that of, hey, can I interview you about your thoughts on a situation that will affect you and it's going to affect a lot of other patients, and I genuinely care and want to know how you feel, and I want to make sure that we give you the best care, and so your feelings are part of that care.
Yeah. And why not? What if you record 3 of your team giving their conversation talk, and say, I want you to listen to these three, and I want you to kind of give me, your feelings and your emotions afterwards, and or however it works. I think it's like, like movies, right? Movies, they run before a test audience, and then they go back and they reshoot the final scene because people left with a bad feeling. It's why can't we kind of do the same thing a little bit? It doesn't make sense. We can't.
No, I think that's genius. So, and I think that if you're pre-planning, it's great. If you decided, hey, I'm doing this 3 months from now, I have to give 90 days notice. I decided to mail the letter off, and I'm going to tell my team 60 days from now because I'm afraid to talk. Then that's probably not. You're not going to have this opportunity, and
Mhm.
that's the joy that I think I have is I do want to retain the patients. We all take it personal when patients leave. But some patients are married to their dental coupon company and some are not. And I think some will work their way back. We'll lose some, we'll retain a lot, and we're gonna get some more, a year or two from now, they'll come back to us.
Mhm.
And to me, that's gonna be the ones that makes me feel the best is the ones that disappear, ask for their records, and a year or two later come back. And I think if I'm going to fast forward 6 months or a year from now, the ones that have requested their letters, I'm going to have my staff just reach out, just a simple email or a simple text message. Hey, we just wanted to follow up and make sure you're comfortable with the care
Yeah.
and the quality of care you're getting. We know you requested your records. We want to make sure you're at a good dental home.
And if
And
you ever
that's it.
if you ever want to come back, just give us a phone call.
Correct.
Period. The other thing is just that me was the thought was too. Let's take it another step. You drop other plans, and you've had patients who've retained and stayed. Why not get a handful of them and say, okay, this is what we went through with you and your insurance company. What are some of the reasons, and what are some of the things that you found worthwhile? What are some of the things that we communicate? What are some things that we could have done better in the process? Now you really can say you're doing two things. You're showing the patient, you're showing your team, listen, there's people right here very happy and have stayed. So we can expect this result. This is not an unusual result. And number two, let's learn from it. What did we do right? What did we do wrong? What can we do better?
No, I think that's awesome. I don't think I've seen that information presented anywhere. I don't know if and I'm not paying a consultant to I just couldn't swallow the pill of paying a consultant, the 10, 20, 30, $100,000. I mean, some of these guys are just ridiculous of what they want to
Yeah,
charge.
I saw a couple of those things. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I think I saw an ad. It's like, yeah, we're $125,000. We're grow your practice $400,000. I'm just like, look, the math makes sense, from an ROI's perspective. That's a large amount of money to pay somebody. That's insane. And I don't, are they giving this feedback? I mean, like, I think I'll present that information freely to everybody, and I think, and I would love if anyone has had that talk to patients afterwards. That would be cool if they threw that up,
Mhm.
on the Facebook group or something like that of, hey, this is the feedback I've actually received.
Mhm.
Because some people have gone through this process, and my guess is not many will follow up like that.
But you've got your team, your community, your patients, and for them to see one of your, oh, Mrs. Smith, yeah, and they'll immediately, because they're going to be joyful because they love the patients, right? It's going to really be, to me, satisfying. Or you can say, listen, or if you have someone on your team is really struggling with it, she's struggling with it. What are some things that you can say to her,
Yep.
et cetera. So, you
No, I
know,
like it. I bet there's going to be 5 or 6 common themes between all different patients
absolutely,
across
absolutely,
everywhere too. And so, but to get your patient's feedback and give it to your staff, will get them on board too as well.
yeah. Well, I
So
think you're on the right track. I'm really excited for you. I think it's gonna go great.
perfect. I hope so too. If not, captain's going down with the ship. So
Yeah, I think you, and I think the other fear though, patients of team the two is also if we lose all these patients, I'll be out of job. I won't have any money.
which is
Right.
why most doctors don't do it, is they fear, hey, in-network plans make up 75%. If I lose 75%, I'm stuck with 25%. I'm where am I going to make up the next 40% in overhead? I'm screwed, and I think
But
that's
That's an honest discussion you got to have with your team, though. Like, listen, who's like, hey, you might have to bring it out. Hey, who's here afraid about losing their job? Who's here afraid of if this happens? Like, let's put our fears on the table, right? Like, you know, like you
I
ever see the movie The Replacements?
long time ago.
There's a scene where he's like, let's talk about our fears. One guy was spiders, one guy was this, and it was, it took a little while, and there was a bunch of macho football players, but eventually, conversation become very, very fruitful. So, probably
I
want to do something similar.
I think that's a beautiful conversation to have in a team meeting. So
Yeah. Well, good luck, man. Keep us posted. We'll get you back on. Well, definitely either before the end of the year or early next year. I'd love to see how things are going.
yeah, I'd love to check in like a month beforehand, see if I backed out or not. Hopefully not. No, I don't think I will, but
Oh man, burn the boats, man. Go for it.
yeah, just light them on fire and push them out to sea. So uh but no, I appreciate it, Sonny. I hope you have a good rest of your summer here, and
Too.
we'll talk with you here in a few months, and then we'll give some updates, right before, and then probably an update afterwards would be nice into the series. So
Thanks for getting up early. Appreciate you, man.
thanks.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Fee for Service Dentist Podcast. If you would like to share your fee for service story, please fill out our contact form at ffsdentistry.com. Also, be sure to join our Fee for Service Dentistry Facebook group. For help starting your dental membership plan, visit dentalmembershipdirect.com and membershipmastercourse.com. Finally, for help with in-house financing, visit dentalfinancingdirect.com. And don't forget, your story is what you make of it. This is your name on the door and your reputation on the line. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.